Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Google Plus Hangout with the Buck Institute for Education. I'm John Larmer, Editor-in-Chief at BIE, and we have a special hangout today with some great guests. More about that in a second, but first a couple of logistics. You can watch this later in our archive at bie.org or tell friends about it. It'll be on our website for a long time. And if you have questions during the hangout, you can post them using the question feature there on the Google Plus events page. We'll get to them during the hangout if we can. If we can't, we'll answer them offline later on the Google Plus page. And we'll go for about a half an hour, plus or minus a few minutes. And that's about it. So please ask questions. We have some great guests today talking about their projects. All right, so today's topic is based on our new book, Setting the Standard for Project-Based Learning, which was published by ASAD, just came out last week. And there's a picture of the cover of it. It's available at our website at bie.org's online store at our shop. And it covers K through 12 project-based learning, the research behind PBL. It lays out our new model for gold standard project-based learning, which replaces our old 8 elements of PBL. So we have those new essential project design elements, which we'll be talking about today in the context of these projects. And we also discuss project-based teaching practices, and we also discuss designing and managing projects, also how to lead a school or a district toward system-wide use of PBL. And finally, a last chapter in the book talks about PBL in informal learning spaces or summer learning. So it's a good book. Hope you will get a copy. And the best feature of the book, you might say, is the project snapshot at the end. So we have 3 teachers, actually 4, who contributed 3 of the projects to our snapshots at the end of the book. And I'll ask our guest to introduce themselves in a second. But first, my co-author, Susie Boss, will be your main host today. Susie co-wrote the book with myself and John Mergendaler. So Susie, say a bit about yourself, and then we'll ask our guests to introduce themselves, and then you can take it away.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be a co-author on this collaboration. And I'm part of the national faculty of the Buck Institute for Education. And I'll tell you, you're going to hear from several teachers in just a moment, but their projects, I had the great privilege of interviewing them about their projects for the 16 project snapshots that you'll find at the end of the book that cover K-12, lots of examples, lots of different subject areas represented, and in each project we really took a look at how projects exemplify these essential design elements and how those design elements make for really deep learning, effective teaching and learning. So back to you, John.
Okay, so let's hear from Jim, and then Jody and Shara, and then Leah. Jim, tell us about yourself and where you are.
Hi, my name is Jim Bentley, and I teach in Oak Grove, California, about 10 minutes south of Sacramento. I've been a fan of PBL teaching for quite a few years now. I teach 5th and 6th grade, and I've taught 8th and 7th, but I've found 5th and 6th to be my 2 favorite grades. I've been lucky enough to loop over the last couple of years, so I've been able to take a 5th grade class and go up to 6th grade with them, and then repeat the process. So I'm going back to 5th grade next year.
Okay.
Are you looking for an opening PBL story at all, or you want just introductions right now?
The story of your project, let's save that for a minute.
Got it.
Let's hear from Jody and Shara. Tell us about yourselves.
So we are both middle school social studies teachers in Los Angeles, and we work in independent schools, and we've been lucky enough to have opportunities to collaborate throughout the years in our own shared classrooms and then in our own separate school sites.
Okay. All right. Welcome. And Leah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leah Oh. I teach at Hamiota Elementary School in Manitoba, Canada. I typically teach grade 1, but I also got the chance to loop this year, so I have my project students from last year in grade 2 for a second year with me, and I'm really enjoying that. So back to grade 1 next year. It's nice to meet all of you on this call today. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Thanks for being here from Canada. All right. So Susie, I'll toss it over to you, and you can hear about these projects with our guests.
Terrific. Well, Jim, I think we're going to start with you. So as Jim mentioned, he loops with 5th and 6th graders, and he's been doing filmmaking for quite some time, which he'll talk a little bit about. In this particular project, it's a really good example of one that shows the value of authenticity authentic product, authentic tools, authentic audience, authentic purpose. And the driving question was, how can we as filmmakers encourage our community to recycle? So Jim, can you tell us a little more about how this project came together and how authenticity played such a prominent role?
Yeah. Actually, the end product that we ended up making resulted from a glorious failure at the beginning, which was kind of interesting. Several years ago, I had students that were looking at improper battery disposal, and we came upon that topic as a result of kind of an inquiry into what we wanted to study as part of a civic education project. Kids were pretty appalled, pretty shocked at how many batteries were not recycled, and we got to work using the Project Citizen curricula, which is put out by the Center for Civic Education. It's kind of a four-step process. Find a problem, identify the issues related to it, find alternative solutions to deal with it, and then advocate for a solution in the end. The solution that we came up with as a class was to put battery collection stations at schools, and we have 40 elementaries, 9 middle, 9 high schools. It seemed like a great repository, great location central to our community of about 160,000 people. Met with city officials, came in, they talked about the plan, and then promptly and politely, with a smile, shot it down for monetary reasons, lack of staff, and also safety issues from battery fires. The result, though, was that a year or two later, we were offered an opportunity to start creating instructional films for our city on how to dispose of green waste, trash, and recyclables responsibly. So while one door closed, a whole new door opened, and we had an authentic client that wanted and needed our services.
Terrific. And do you want to talk a little bit more about that partnership and how, in this case, the city could well have gone to an outside agency. Instead, They took the risk of contracting with a group of 5th and 6th graders. You want to talk a little bit about the seriousness of the task and how your students rose to the challenge?
Absolutely. No, the thing that was so impressive was that, and it came down to having one really dynamic, energetic, responsible who believed in the ability of my students to be actually to do this kind of work. She had produced a few different films, and she'd seen that, and she realized how serious students were, and she actually entered into a partnership with us, asking us if we were willing to, work with their scripting and use our filmmaking tools. We had, plenty of experiences meeting, collaborating, discussing throughout the process, making sure that the expectation was being met in terms of the image and the look. The students were highly motivated, incredibly engaged, working weekends, after schools, during our off-track time, since we're a year-round school. It was pretty quickly apparent that, for Cedar, for the city integrated waste manager who wanted to work with us, it was a win-win. She had to do a little work with her city supervisors and other council members to make sure that this wasn't going to look like a bad experience. So the kids knew the seriousness of it. Got on board, though, and saw some of the initial film samples and sequences that we were able to put together. They realized that they were going to look like heroes I shouldn't say, but working with kids. The kids felt empowered and felt like heroes. The principal looked great. The school district looked great. It was kind of just pats on the back for everybody. It's been an interesting process. There is a service learning grant that goes along with this, so they have been giving us money to fund equipment, materials, and supplies. And I think that funding was very much appreciated, very much useful, but it also kind of added a level of seriousness that kids realized we've been hired to do something, and this is not some typical fun little classroom project. This is something that must be done. And I think that really kind of brought up the level of seriousness for a lot of kids.
Yeah. Just one more quick question there. Yeah. When we spoke earlier, you mentioned that kids were really willing to stretch themselves on behalf of this project, that sometimes it meant reading above what you would expect in terms of reading comprehension level or tackling content that was challenging, and that in fact you said kids are willing to get frustrated a little bit if they get to do something real. Can you talk just a little bit more about that, what you saw in terms of kids stretching themselves?
Yeah, there's not a lot of research that's written specifically for kids when it comes to improper battery disposal. When you're looking at state laws that deal with the governance of trash and disposals of recyclables, they're lawyers. They're not written for 10 and 11-year-old kids. So yeah, they did find themselves getting frustrated. but they also had the motivation to work around that. You know, adding in the idea of close reading and reading with partners. It's kind of like scuba diving. We never read alone. We never write alone. There's always a buddy system that takes place. If one or two kids are confused, that means we need to go get one or two more kids or maybe an adult. But when the need to know is strong enough, what I found is that kids are willing to step up and really put in the effort, ask for the help, and read. I mean, read seriously, read closely, read deeply.
Fantastic. So I'm hoping we'll bring you back in towards the end of our hangout today for a few more of your strategies. But before we shift over to Jody and Shara, perhaps you could give us a quick look at who's watching you talk right now. I know you're
absolutely. Yeah, we've got some students working. We've got some students working right now. In fact, end of the year assessments. We even have a student team that's editing a book trailer right now for a children's author. Here's our editing team right there, going to work.
Says a lot about your class culture, your PBL culture, that you have such a game group of students who are willing to hang in there while you're doing an interview. So appreciate that, and thanks, students, for joining us today in such a respectful way. Okay, so thanks, Jim. So Jody and Shara, we're going to shift over to you, and you are two social studies teachers who have over the years taught about the Civil War a number of times. But you came upon a project that takes an interesting look at how did technology change the Civil War, and in particular your driving question, how did your technology, in other words the students' choice of technology, change the Civil War? I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this project and how it really got at that kind of key knowledge, understanding, and success skills that students need to master, so right at the heart of important content.
So one of the most important things I think about this particular project is that I think it's scaffolded a lot. So by the time the students are doing it and they're kind of thrown into this, you know, project-based learning atmosphere for this particular project, they've already gotten a lot of skills in terms of being able to research and you know, properly cite their sources and kind of figure out how to navigate primary sources in the Library of Congress and that kind of thing. So by the time we're asking them to do this, they have some skills in place that are already pretty solid.
And it's also coming at the end of the year, where we've been trying to train them to think historically the whole year. So, you know, they're looking for influences, they're looking for for causation, they're looking for, you know, the beginning of the year, we have very different kids than we do by the end.
Sure.
So matters a lot.
By the end, they can read a site, and we've already gone through Common Sense Media's Test Before You Trust, and they go, oh, you know what, this site seems like it's got a particular perspective that, I don't know, you know, so, you know, they know to look for the other perspective, and so they have a lot of skills that have already been, you know, put in place by the time they do this project. And additionally, like content-wise, this comes right after a pretty intensive Causes of the Civil War unit, because that, in terms of content, is just so important for them to be able to have all of that context and for them to be able to, you know, see the Civil War. And we ask them to look particularly about technology in the Civil War. Well, they need the whole context in order to be able to actually do the project.
Okay. Tell us a little more, if you would, about why technology, why that focus or that lens for exploring the Civil War, and how your students responded, you know, to that approach.
Well, so first of all, the kids are so used to hearing technology in reference to their laptops and, you know, their phones and whatever kind of technology access each kid has. And so first of all, it opens up a nice conversation to be able to say technology isn't something that has to have an on button. That, you know, technology is human invention as it's moved through time, and to look at previous technological innovations and how they've changed society, and then they can also see how what they see as technology today is also changing. So it's a lens that hooks them.
Okay, right. Go ahead.
In terms of the Civil War, the Civil War really does still affect us today. It may not feel as apparent, but in terms of, you know, culturally as a society, And that's one of our goals in history, is to get it to be relevant for the students. And so we kind of try to go through it through this lens of technology, so that they see that the technology during the Civil War changed the outcome of the Civil War in such a way that things are now the way they are, and that certain inventions can really, really shape history.
Okay, and what do we see on the screen now? There's a photo that you're sharing now. What's this an example of?
So we have the students choose which type of technology they really want to, put their whole selves in and research and be able to then present in their own individual ways. So this, we're looking at students who created a working telegraph in order to kind of reimagine what the technology that was used at that time that really truly changed communication, both then and up until now. So they made, a working telegraph with batteries. Batteries are the theme of the day.
Okay, but they actually were able to send a message from one classroom to another, right?
Yeah. And that's this year. They were working on this. I think is a first iteration. I don't think it ended up. This particular iteration didn't work. But then, they reevaluated and started over because what they were trying to, what we're trying to get at in terms of them as students is what we were talking about before, like this grit and this ability to persevere even when they fail. But also, again, tied back to content. How did communication change the war itself?
And it really, because there's this tangible aspect to the project, they're not just writing a paper about it, they're doing something. It causes them to understand all the way around the issue as opposed to understanding from one dimension. So, they understand how this technology actually worked, and it makes them able to be able to integrate that in with what they're learning about the greater context of the time in a way that's a lot more effective than us just standing and telling them about, by the way, there were telegraphs and they did this thing and they impacted this way. They understand it because they've made one.
Absolutely. And then I think there are a couple more images. You want to tell us about this one?
Yeah, so this was a group, they wanted to, and the little pieces of paper, pieces of information, but they wanted to show, you can see there are some toothpicks on one side that are thinner and then toothpicks that are thicker on the other side. They wanted to kind of show the ideological difference between the North and South based on the fact that they had different gauges for their railways, and so that was somehow, a symbol for their inability to work together at the time, and that technology just exemplified that reality.
When that also had impact in transportation and in battles, and that came up in historical context as well.
Sure, and I think we might have one more image, and using modern technologies to produce this, right?
Yeah, so a little bit, using the new technology to make the old, they wanted to use Tinkercad to be able to make their own model and then print it on the 3D printer for their model of the train tracks.
Okay, and again, we're going to come back together as a whole group at the end to talk about some of the other strategies that you use to really make this project go. But one final question before we hand off to Leah, and I guess that's about just kind of your ability as students produce very different kinds of artifacts. I'm guessing on the assessment side, looking for that, did they really understand deeply? Did they master key content and those success skills? Was there one rubric that you used across different kinds of projects?
Yeah, so we have a rubric. It's very subjective, and it's universal. That we have, let me see if I can pull them up off the top of my head. All projects must be beautiful, meaningful, sophisticated, enduring, and shareable with respect to their audience.
And that's from Gary Stager.
That we went to a PBL workshop with him a few years ago, and he presented that as a potential rubric for us to use. And what has come so lovely from that is that it really, what is a beautiful poem versus what is a beautiful Stephen Janine with Tinkercad versus what is a beautiful, they're transferable, really any subject matter, and it allows the kids, instead of, there's no concept of, did I do it right? Did I finish it right? Am I done? It's, well, you look at these very subjective categories and say, where would you fall? How would you judge it based on this?
Great. Okay. Yeah. We may have more questions at the end for that. So, Leah, if we could shift over to you, and you're going to tell us a bit about the Farmer Appreciation Project that you did with very young students, first graders in Manitoba, Canada. You're one of our international projects. There are several in the collection. But in your project, it was impressive to hear the role of voice and choice that came through in this project right from the get-go, from the very project idea, and that you were able to emphasize voice and choice with very young learners. So can you tell us a bit about the Farmer Appreciation Project and also the role that voice and choice played throughout it?
Yes. So my students in first grade actually were really perceptive to a local issue, and that's what kicked off our project. We're an agricultural community, and our farmers were having a difficult harvest season because of weather. Too much rain was preventing them from getting crops off, and even though only a certain percentage of my students are directly involved with farming, they noticed that that was an issue and really wanted to do something for farming. So voice and choice is really important to me for a number of reasons. Even though I only teach 6- and 7-year-olds, I think it really helps our students of any age take ownership of the project and increases engagement. It lets them know it's their project, it's their work to do, and also they're excited. That's the thing that I hear from parents, the community. Those kids are talking about their project everywhere when they come up with an idea and they're allowed to put it into action.
Could you tell us a little about the entry event that kicked this off? It was an interesting approach of having your students talk with previous year students, so a little bit older peers, to kind of get some of these ideas percolating.
Yes, what we did actually, because I've been doing project-based learning in my classroom for a number of years, collaborating with a colleague in another school, Devin Caldwell, we bring our 2 classes together each year to work on at least one project, often more. And what we did is invited guests from both of our schools to present on a conference call that day to share the projects that they'd done when they were in our classroom. And I think that when young children have a voice like that, and can see other students were able to do it, they're really empowered. They realize that their ideas matter and that their actions can make a positive difference. We often teach kids about consequences in a don't do way, as in, if you act like this, there's going to be consequences. But I think we can also teach them that from the other side, in being a good, positive, good citizen has an impact as well, and that we can make a positive difference as well, even if we're only 6 or 8 or 10 or 18.
It's fantastic. And we're just getting a question now about tying projects to standards or addressing standards through projects. In your case, you were quite eloquent when we spoke before about the literacy skills that students develop through this project and the way that you were able to integrate activities that related directly to your standards. Do you want to talk just a little bit about the important learning that came out of this project, while the context is student voice and choice and a farmer appreciation event that students planned? There were lots of teaching activities that were quite deliberately included. So tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely. I find that project-based learning, although I've tried other approaches, is the most natural way for me to tie curriculum areas together, because doing a project often requires skills in a variety of different areas and knowledge in a variety of different areas. I can help my students, again, like you said, we worked on writing. We had to write invitations. We had to write lists. We incorporated my division's required unit on procedural writing and that text type study. And lots of critical thinking and problem-solving skills, of course. Part of the reason why I have my young students brainstorm their ideas is because that's a lot deeper thinking than me giving them a topic and telling them the unit we're going to do. Instead, I take their topic ideas and find a way to teach my curriculum and help them meet their goals through that project.
Terrific. This might be a nice moment to, and thanks, Leah, for sharing a little of that wonderful project. So delightful to just imagine what the final culminating event was like when you had this group of farmers showing up. And before we shift from you, do you want to tell us just a little bit about the culminating event when your farmers appeared in person?
I would love to. It was a really proud day in my classroom. Once students had done all of the steps of their project to plan everything and invite everyone, our classroom was rearranged that day. We had to move our furniture around a bit and get a few extra chairs. And what happened that day was that local farmers that had been invited came, and my students served refreshments, provided entertainment, actually just got to visit and talk with farmers. And it was a really special day because the students were able to see their audience. I think that's another great power of PBL is that audience, and they got to meet them face to face and see the people who had seen all of the work that went into this day. And they took the time to let us know how appreciative they were of us taking the time to recognize them and their hard work, because I think sometimes we forget, being an agriculture community, that is really important, even though we're kind of all connected to it, that farmers do special and important work.
Fantastic. Well, these are such strong examples of what PBL can look like in the classroom. Maybe we can kind of open it up to everyone to talk a little bit about what happens from the teacher's perspective, the project-based teaching practices that really make projects like these go and make them be successful. So perhaps anybody who feels like jumping in might want to talk a little bit about anything from, how you're engaging students, how you're coaching and kind of modeling the skills and strategies that you want to see in students, scaffolding, assessment, which of those really make projects kind of fly?
So I think one thing that we're constantly trying to instill in our students is this idea that they don't need validation from us for every single step of everything. For whether the project is a project like a PBL project or an essay, the idea that they often will, is this right? Is this good enough? Did I do okay? And so trying to get them to feel more comfortable in their own decisions. And so I know that a strategy that we use a lot is to answer their questions with questions, which is really obnoxious to them, but it causes them to continue to reach, and it shows them that we are not the possessors of the right answer. That it's about what they can push themselves to find, and so we try to continually put the onus back on them.
And for this particular project that we did, I give them a checklist so that they have something that they can refer back to, but it's still theirs. It's their checklist. They get to organize it the way they want to, but it's something that can help them that gives a little bit more teacher support without the teacher being the person driving it.
That's great. That's great. And Jim, I'm curious, in your classroom, obviously there's a strong culture there for the way your kids work together. Can you talk with us a little bit about how you deliberately build that culture where kids are able to collaborate and take risks and sometimes have, as what you described as, some epic fails that they can recover from?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a hard thing to do, but it's funny. The classroom culture, in terms of relying upon others, we try really hard. I try really hard to build in from the very first day that asking for help or asking a question or asking for assistance is not a weakness. It's more a sign of strength. And I tell students, one of my students is here who's going into high school next year, probably nod his head. One of the best things you can do is ask questions. When you go to college, when you go to high school, ask questions. It's not the person who knows the most; it's the person who asks the best questions. Things like the collaboration rubric from BIE, fantastic tool. I would have had that 10 years ago. Would have made my world a lot different. Relying on tools like rubrics like that, relying on rules like norms, expectations, being really open and honest, having classroom meetings. It can be a little uncomfortable at times, but after 2 years looping together, it becomes very open and transparent for a lot of kids to turn to each other for help, or to turn someone in for not being the teammate that they should be. So it's a real strong feeling, culture.
Fantastic. And Leah, when we spoke earlier, you described some of the ways that you kind of model and sit alongside students sometimes and coach them through some of these skills that are going to be new to them. Collaboration, for example, in a first grade classroom. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you kind of model that and help them through some problem solving when that comes up?
Yes, I guess it's kind of a unique situation. When you do work with really young children, you sometimes forget that they might not have any experience, working effectively with someone else. And a lot of that does come through modeling. So I might directly ask a student to sit beside me in front of the class, and I'll say, okay, well, I noticed you and your peer were having a problem. This is what it looked like. And maybe this is what it should have looked like, and actually demonstrate the kind of language we might use, some phrases that can help them with that, and just taking those opportunities, whether it goes well or not, to make sure that they know what good collaboration and teamwork looks like, what effective communication looks like. And of course, we're going to make mistakes, but that's one of the beauties of project-based learning. Mistakes are a good thing. We can learn from them and show them how we would like them to do that.
Fantastic. And Jody and Shara, a couple of things I wanted to touch base with you on. One is just your ability to collaborate as partners yourselves, and how that kind of supports your teaching. I know Leah also has a teacher colleague that she works with. So teacher collaboration is one question. And then your Civil War project, I know is one you've used and refreshed multiple times. So maybe you could talk about both your own collaboration and how you can kind of build on your investment in a good project idea and keep it fresh and reuse and make multiple uses of the good work that you put into designing it.
Just because, backwards. In terms of the how it's kind of built up over time is we started this project together because we really wanted to find a unit that really would work with PBL, and we just kind of put ourselves fully into it. And then once we did it the first time, there was a lot of reflection involved. What didn't work, what did they need, what could we have done differently, what could they have done differently to make it more successful, or to get to those enduring understandings a little bit better, and to connect it better to the causes of the Civil War, to Reconstruction, and all those things. And so the checklist that I mentioned before, that's something that I added later to help with this, the students to be able to be more successful. I don't know. Is there anything else we've changed?
Well, I just think that this project was exemplary of the struggle that I always find myself with PBL, which is especially with historic content, in that how do we step back as teachers and let the kids take the reins, but also keeping them on content. And so it's walking that line between making sure that we're doing enough setup in the beginning so that we can give them the project and step back, and they are able to do history the way that we would hope that, or a way we would hope that they would do history if we were holding their hands more.
And in terms of our collaboration, I think that reflection, I know, I can speak for myself, that reflection for me always works so much better when it's in conversation. And we also both, ascribe very much to the understanding by design model. And when we come up with enduring understandings for any unit, I find it's imperative to talk through them in order to really craft them to be what they should be. And so whenever I think anytime we're crafting something new or reflecting on something, we do it in collaboration, despite the fact we haven't always been working in the same place or doing the same thing.
Okay. Well, I think we're sadly coming to the end of our half hour together, but I'll just mention that in the project snapshots, in addition to getting some more insight into how these projects unfolded, how they work, there are also lots of gems of teaching strategies that these teachers and the others I spoke with shared. So for teachers who are listening, you can just learn a lot from a window into PBL classrooms, and so that's what you have to look forward to with these examples. So back to you, John. Whoops, John, I think your mic is muted.
Hello. Thanks, Susan. Okay, I'll get back for a final word of goodbye from our guests in a second, but let me just remind everybody watching that this is archived at BIE.org, so you can check it out or tell your friends about it. And remember, our new book is called Setting the Standard for Project-Based Learning, where you can read about these projects as well as many more, and a lot more about PBL K through 12. So check that out on our website. And next week, our hangout will be with Gina Olabonaga, my colleague who is our Curriculum and National Faculty Manager, and a couple of teachers from our national faculty talking about supporting English learners in project-based learning. We'll look at an elementary school project and how one of the teachers was able to scaffold that project for her English learner students. So that'll be next week, same time, noon on June 16th.
Great.
So let's have a final word of goodbye from each of our guests. So I'll go in order again. Jim, how about you first?
Oops, you need to unmute your mic also, Jim.
Oops. Really enjoyed time with you guys. Really enjoyed hearing what the other teachers here had to share. I'd love to continue the conversation more. If people want to reach out on Twitter, at Curiosity Films, at Curiosity_Films, we'd love to talk more about this. It's an exciting moment.
Great.
All right, thanks, Jim. And Jody and Sharon.
I'd like to reiterate what Jim just said. It was really inspiring to hear about the different projects that are being done, and also with such different age groups. I was very happy to be able to partake today.
And you can also continue the conversation with us on Twitter. We're at 21st Century Teacher, but with no E, which is ridiculous. But
that's what was available.
And thank you so much for having us today.
Right. Thank you for being here. And Leah.
Well, I just want to say thanks for including us in your book. My students were thrilled to hear that their work was included. They were thrilled just to do the project, but it was really exciting news for them that other people wanted to read about it, and I'm really excited to read the rest of the book and learn some more. So I'm ready to go with project-based learning next year.
Great.
All right. Thanks for being with us, Leah. And Susie.
Sure. Sure. Just thanks to all of you who are here today and the other teachers who were willing to kind of open their projects for some discussion and open their strategy toolkit for sharing. I think you'll find that PBL teachers are by nature a pretty collaborative group. They kind of walk the talk when it comes to collaboration and sharing good ideas, so lots to learn from them. But thanks all for your contributions.
Okay, thanks everybody. And if any of you out there are coming to PBL World, our event in Napa, California at the end of this month, Susie and I will be there. We'll see you there, and we'll be signing books. And you'll be learning more about the gold standard for project-based learning. Our new PBL 101 workshop is all oriented now toward the gold standard. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week, I hope. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.